What's going on, everybody? I'm John J. II, and this is the Gin College Podcast. I'm here with Cody Almasi. Cody, how are we doing today, man?
Doing good, man. Ready to talk college football. Noon kickoff for Michigan State just being announced, and a couple upsets, but just ready to talk about it.
Yeah, obviously the 12 o'clock kickoff is kind of a kick in the nuts for a lot of fans, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. We'll go through our games and everything like that that's on our docket, and we'll get into that probably in our closing statements or our other featured games that we're going to be looking forward into Friday's show and just things like that. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But yeah, a lot of crazy games this past weekend, that is, and a lot to look forward to. And this really paints the picture, especially in the Big Ten, where we'll talk about the Iowa-Purdue game. And that was a shocker. That was probably the shocker of the week. And yeah, crazy stuff. So let's dive right into it. Let's talk about Ole Miss and Tennessee, the over-under 82. Let's talk about this game a little bit, Cody. What do you got?
Yep, it was like I think we talked about in the show on Friday that it was the first sellout crowd in a long time there in Tennessee, in Knoxville, and it did disappoint. Only a 5-point win for Ole Miss, and it went down to the wire. The QB matchup we talked about, it lived up to the hype. Matt Corral threw for 233 yards, and he ran for he threw for 231, and he ran for 195. So dude was all over the field, throwing it, running it in. Yeah, he threw his first pick of the season, but that's to be expected. It's going to happen week 6 or 7. You're not too mad about it. Hendon Hooker for the Tennessee Volunteers, he goes down, but with 18 seconds left, he had a great game as well. Both quarterbacks got over 100 yards on the ground, so they were responsible for most of of their respective teams' yards, and it was just a thriller to watch. Lane Kiffin, if you guys didn't see it, got trash thrown on him. The whole Tennessee Volunteers crowd just react awfully to some the refs confirmed stoppage on a 4th and 24. They almost got it. The Tennessee Volunteers almost converted on a 4th and 24, and the Rebels stopped them. And then the Tennessee home crowd just threw trash, golf balls, water bottles, you name it. They were throwing it on the field, and it was something to see.
Bad sportsmanship, to say the least, on the Tennessee Volunteers end. And that's just unacceptable. You can't have that in a college atmosphere. Obviously it's going to happen. Fans are going to get rowdy, but to throw debris and things of that nature, golf balls, I think a golf ball actually connected with Lane Kiffin, that's uncalled for and is unacceptable. It's a black mark on the Tennessee Volunteers fan base and the entire team, essentially, because it's just something that you don't want to be remembered for, and especially to make contact with the head coach. It's just it's not a good thing to be remembered for. So obviously,
exactly.
Big win. Yeah, big
You're
win
trying
for
to build
Ole Miss.
momentum and build something for seasons going forward. Your team's looking good. Had a few tough losses like this one to a great team who's only lost to Alabama, and that's how you're going to be remembered by it. It's just, unfortunate.
Yeah, so big win, 31-26 over the Volunteers. Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels come out with a win at Tennessee. Really big game. And yeah, pretty much that's all there is to say about it. And it's just a really good game to watch, and a great game for Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. So let's move on and talk about the Michigan State Spartans against Indiana. Let's kind of look at this game from an objective standpoint. I got some maybe not as objective takes from this game, obviously, because I have a different sense of interest in this game, having my Spartans in there. But what were your takeaways from this Michigan State-Indiana game?
I said that Indiana could maybe try to put together an emotional win, but you can't do that without any offense. And the Spartans, though they didn't have the best offensive performance themselves, their defense was able to really put the team on their backs. I don't know exact position he plays, but Cal Holiday had that nice pick six, which really helped the Spartans get the dub in the end. But what do you have to think about your Spartans?
Yeah, so that Kyle Holiday pick was actually the first play that I saw of that game. When I turned that game on the TV, it was literally Cal Holiday catching that pass and driving it all the way home for the pick six. So that was a good first play for me to watch. I'm like, okay, it's going to be a good game. We're going to cruise through this one, maybe get a comfortable lead. But it was everything but that. So 2 interceptions from Peyton Thorne, 14 for 26, 126 yards, 1 touchdown. That's just not what you really want out of a quarterback. Obviously, they had that crazy play where he got that pass on a halfback pass, pretty impressive highlight catch on the sideline for him. But, I just didn't see enough fire out of Peyton Thorne. I still see a lot of that indecision. I see a lot of, uncertainty as far as having faith in his own offense and his own throwing arm and his abilities as a quarterback. I see those holes there, and that's not going to hold up against a high-class team. As we talked about pre-show, a team like Ohio State or even an Iowa or a Penn State, they got some of these teams in their future. So, even Michigan coming up next week, that's going to be a big test for Peyton Thorne. Their defense is no joke. So we got to be focused on that as Michigan State fans. And, even from the coaching staff's perspective, you got to buy this weekend. You got to focus on that, be able to fill in those gaps and make sure you're ready for Michigan. I said this before. I said this last week in last week's show for the week 7 upcoming. I think Michigan got the better end of the stick by having their bye last week instead of this week, because they're going to have that week to prepare and meditate, which they already had, but they also have this week coming up against Northwestern where they have a game to basically get them in the rhythm again of playing a football game, especially a conference game. And Northwestern should be, I don't want to jinx the Wolverines in saying this, but it should be a pretty easy task for them to handle going into the Michigan State weekend and East Lansing a week from now. But we want to, or that's probably a little more than a week from now. It's probably a week and a half, right? So
yeah.
It's going to be a test. It's going to be a test to see how Michigan State handles this bye week and how they bounce back and how they get more of a dominant performance coming into Michigan.
Yeah, Northwestern looked at least a little bit better than they have in weeks past, or Rutgers looks worse. I'm not sure which is the case, but I really thought the Wildcats are going to beat the Scarlet Knights, and Wildcats proved me wrong. I got all my locks of the week proved wrong. It was a bad one for college analytics.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's how college football is. We say this all the time here at Gin Pros and on the Gin Sports Network. There is no such thing as an automatic lock. There's just not.
Especially not this year. There's the favorites are in the upsets. I'd say there's going to be upsets before at the end of every Friday show, but it's not the ones I expect. I didn't think Iowa was going to lose to Purdue. I never thought Alabama was going to lose to Texas A&M. But I love to see it as a fan, from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Sparty has a bye week against, before a huge rivalry game on October 30th, obviously Michigan State in East Lansing at 12 o'clock. A lot of people were expecting a 3:30 game or even possibly a night game. But you wanted to think that they were going to have, College Game Day there, have this be the game of the week. And it just didn't happen to be the case, especially, you think, in the years past, it's been College Game Day, the game of the week, when they weren't both undefeated. Now they're looking like they might both be undefeated coming into this game 7-0 apiece. And I don't want to predict the future for Michigan. Anything can happen on Saturday against Northwestern, but you want to expect that from the Wolverines coming from where they've came so far. But just to touch one more thing on this game, Michigan State stopping that 2-point conversion, keeping it a 17-15 game was everything. Then them converting on another long field goal from Matt Coughlin and winning at 20-15. Not really a dominant win, but they covered the 3.5. I think if you put that game that game could have easily been 7, favoring the Spartans, in which the Hoosiers would have covered. So big win, and they also covered. So you beat the bookies if you took State and the spread. Got lucky, though. Got a little more lucky than you'd want to be in that game. So let's move on. Let's talk about Oklahoma State and Texas. Obviously a big matchup. Maybe not as big as Texas, Oklahoma, but it's right there next to it. Similar to maybe an Ohio State, Michigan State matchup compared to, the bigger rivalry with Ohio State and Michigan. But what do we see out of the Cowboys and the Longhorns game this past weekend?
I like that comparison of the Michigan State and the Ohio State there.
Thank you.
But yeah, Oklahoma State, they want to be looked at like Oklahoma. They're saying put some respect on our names, on the Cowboys, and they rallied from 13 to 24 was the score and 19 unanswered to beat Texas at home. So it's a great performance. A little bit shaky through the beginning, but I think his name is Spencer Sanders. Yeah, he had a passing and rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter to seal the deal and knock Florida out of it. And that's a big loss for Florida. We were talking about it on Friday. Oklahoma didn't have much to lose with one loss, and Texas had everything to lose by falling to 3 losses. And yeah, I don't know where they go from there, but it's going to be interesting to see. 4-3, you want to avoid falling to 500, and you just want to get some momentum going forward for next season if you're the Longhorns and not let it get out of hand.
Yeah, that's the important thing is now if you're the Longhorns, you're focused on damage control. Okay, this game against Oklahoma State, I don't know if you guys remember, but last Friday I had a little bit of a long shot pick. I liked the Cowboys in this matchup, even though the Texas Longhorns were favored. Let's just take a quick gander at the spread. Texas -3.5, which, didn't really have much of a chance of hitting for most of the game. It was a pretty, back and forth scoring game where it kind of went both ways. Spencer Sanders really took the team and put him on his back. Having a rushing touchdown, going 19 for 32, 178 yards, threw an interception, but we don't really want to focus on that a whole lot. A win's a win. And what those numbers say as far as scores at the end, when it reads triple zeros on the scoreboard, that's really all that matters. That's all you can take away from it, regardless of the statistics that got you there. So big win for the Cowboys. Obviously, the Texas Longhorns are in big time catch up mode. Staying at
Baylor
25
next week.
Are they staying at 25 in the AP polls, or did they get knocked out?
Yeah, they're out of there. I didn't update the rankings for the recap.
That's right. I don't think ESPN did either.
Yeah.
ESPN obviously didn't either, and those rankings just came out today. So make sure to check out those AP polls.
But Oklahoma State moves to 8. Longhorns fall out, and then the Longhorns they play the 20th ranked Baylor Bears in Waco next week. So they got some figuring out to do. Though Bijan Robinson, he had another Heisman worthy performance, 173 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he looked good.
Yeah, he looked good, and I think he just can't really count on his defense, and that's just one of those things where it's just like it has to be a team effort. It has to be a team effort. It has to be a team win. We saw a lot of that last night in the NFL games. A couple of thrillers, a couple that went to overtime, and we'll talk about that maybe at the end. But really, it has to be a team effort. It has to be an offensive and defensive performance. You can't have one without the other, because the other one that's not. That's doing better than the other is going to have to pull the weight of the other one. Sometimes that's just not enough to steal the win. It was almost enough in this game, but just slightly not enough for the Longhorns to pull out. So heartbreaking loss. They're going to be playing some catch up going into the latter half of the season. Let's move on. Let's talk about Kentucky against Georgia and the Bulldogs. Is Georgia just too good? Are they unbeatable? What's going on here?
Yeah, I was going to ask you the same question. I mean, it looks like it. At least their defense is too good. And I seen a graphic, and it showed the last 8 or 9 national champions, and their defense had the lowest I think was 11 points a game, and Georgia's sitting at 6.5 points a game. So that's points allowed. And if you're doing that, it doesn't really matter what you're doing on offense. But even on offense, they're starting to really get in a rhythm. Stetson Bennett and freshman tight end Brock Bowers really had a connection going this weekend. Bennett had 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Brock Bowers had 5 catches for 101 of those 250 yards, and he scored twice. So I don't know if the Bulldogs are going to be challenged before facing Alabama again, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
not again.
They got Florida and the Gators next week, so they're going to be tested. Florida's coming in, nothing to lose. Hopefully,
Lost
they give them a good
LSU last weekend.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But they're gonna be coming in, nothing to lose. I'm gonna be looking forward to this game coming up. We'll talk about that in our Friday show as well. But looking at this Georgia team, they're looking very resilient. Got to give credit to the Wildcats of Kentucky, though. They did cover 21.5. And I had that as one of my picks. So I was happy for them to cover that bet. And hopefully they can continue to cover. They might even get some more pity going forward with the bookies as far as, points given to them. pregame. So maybe they will, maybe they won't. They've also been favored. They've been favored against the LSU Tigers too, and they won that and covered that. So
Yeah, Kentucky's got a lot to play for still, just with one loss in the SEC. So
yeah, I mean, you're doing pretty good. If you only have one loss, you're mid-tier, even some would say a low-tier team in the SEC. One loss really isn't going to cause too much damage, especially when you're talking about bowl game contention and things like that. So there's a lot to consider, and a lot to still fight for UK and the Wildcats. UK.
Yeah, Georgia, they let up 13 in this game. The 6 points came with 4 seconds left. Kentucky, just a pride touchdown, trying to get in one more time, cover the spread for you. That's quite the beat when you think about it.
It really is.
But then Georgia, that defense responds with no time left by blocking the field goal attempt, the PAT. So they were a little upset about letting up one more touchdown.
Yeah, they were. And they didn't want that to happen probably. And that might have, I don't want to say added insult to injury for the Wildcats because they were probably happy to score because if they didn't have that touchdown, they would not have covered. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but so
maybe some dudes on the team had a bet on it.
Yeah, very possibly. So, great game overall. Obviously, no really surprises there. If you're expecting, UGA and the Bulldogs, you're expecting them to win that game. They have a better history. They have better experience in being in these situations with having the record they do in this point in the season. So it was quite, it was a game that wasn't really too surprising, I guess. It was pretty by the book, and you expected it to happen unless you expected Georgia to cover the spread. In that case, it wouldn't have been expected. So big game and good game for Georgia and the Bulldogs. They will stay at number 1 on the AP polls and be there pretty comfortably, at least for now. So let's move on. Let's talk about the next featured game, Big Ten game, the Purdue Boilermakers against the Iowa Hawkeyes at Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. What are we seeing out of this game? Obviously a big shocker. This was the shock of the week. And, it's only right that it happened in the Big Ten. This opens the door for a lot of Big Ten teams that maybe thought that they were too far behind a team like Iowa or a team like Penn State, but now they both have a loss under their belt. I guess, what does this game make as far as a statement and what happened throughout this game to make it the outcome that happened?
Yeah, this one took me by complete surprise. Still don't really understand it. Don't want to take anything away from the Purdue or the Boilermakers. But, yeah, I thought Iowa would get the job done. They were sitting pretty at number 2 for 1 week, is it? And then they get their bubble burst. And, yeah, that one hurts if you're a Hawkeye fan. But Purdue quarterback, he was going off, almost hit 400 yards. He had 30 for 40, 375 yards and 3 total touchdowns. And wide receiver David Bell had 240 yards and a touchdown. But I guess Purdue has won the last 4 or 5, so I didn't hear that stat come out before the game or anything.
No, I didn't either. And they didn't really promote that or push that too hard, but that is accurate. To have them win against the Hawkeyes is one thing, but for them to win this dominantly is another thing, especially in an away game where they held it for a good portion of the game. And things weren't looking too good for Purdue early on. They were down. They were, actually they started up, but then they tied the game, or they didn't tie the game yet, but they actually got down a touchdown. They gave themselves a chance, Iowa, that is. And then after that, it was all about the Boilermakers. They pulled away and really sealed the deal, especially on the defensive side. Throwing 4 interceptions for Petrus that's unacceptable, something that's very unprecedented from Spencer. And no one really expected this to happen, but the defense from Purdue really stepped it up. And I think they pulled a lot of their weight and a lot of the weight for that entire team in that win. Very dominant win.
Yep. That's something to hang your hat on. And like as we always talk about in recruiting going forward, if we beat the number 2 team, you can be a part of the team that beat the number 2 team going forward. And we have a chance to compete in the Big Ten every year. So big win for the Boilermakers.
Oh, big time.
That's the second time in 3 seasons they beat the number 2 team, though. So that's something they can actually start to make a thing. They beat the Buckeyes in 2018 when they were ranked 2nd in the nation.
Yeah, exactly. And a team like this, Definitely a mid-tier. I even put them at the lower tier as far as the Big Ten, considering how strong they've been this year as far as the rankings go and different matchups that they found themselves in. To see Purdue win this game against a powerhouse team like Iowa, especially after winning that 50-50 game against Penn State at home. This is a big deal for Purdue. And it just goes to show the Big Ten is essentially, maybe I can say this lightly, but it's a very wide open conference. It's always really been that way, where any team can come out and win against almost any team week after week. Any Big Ten team, any Big Ten game, the competition is so strong just because it's a Big Ten game. It really raises all of the emotions for both sides of the team. So for both sides on the game. So it's a toss up almost every single game. You can't really take one or the other, no matter what the statistics say, no matter what the standings say, no matter what that number says next to your team name. It's a it's a toss up every single week. So,
and like you said, we can't skip over the Wildcats this Saturday, but essentially say we're both going undefeated come October 30th. We're the last two undefeated teams in the Big Ten. And on that same day, there will only be one left. So it's just, if that goes to show you anything. And the same with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. If they continue down the stretch, they meet up on the last game of the season, they could be undefeated.
That's true. And I think the biggest question mark is, since these divisions are so, they're so weighted towards the east side compared to the west. You got Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and that's pretty much the stacked side of it. But on the west, it's Iowa, and now you got Purdue emerging. Wisconsin's not playing great, so it's basically just Iowa. Who's going to beat Iowa to claim that Western Division? And I think that's going to really seal the deal. And I don't know, you got teams like Purdue winning Iowa in the Western Division of the Big Ten. I mean,
these are teams we got to keep our eyes on because we could potentially be matching up with them in the Big Ten championship.
Oh, real easy because it's the West versus the East in the Big Ten championship game. So that's something we got to consider moving forward.
Gophers, the Minnesota Golden Gophers over there at 2-1. So you never know what could happen for the last 5 games here.
Yeah, because Minnesota, they beat Purdue. So that's something to consider too. Obviously, PJ Fleck's doing something right over there with the Golden Gophers. So the Big Ten's crazy. It gets even crazier the further on you go into the season. So don't undermine this conference. They're a big deal. They got a lot of powerhouse teams. They're looking very good this year. Very competitive. This is probably the most heat that I've seen out of the Big Ten in a long time, I guess, respectively across the conference. And that's something that I'm really proud to see happen in our own conference. So really impressive stuff. Cool. Good deal. So let's go into some of these featured games. Let's talk about, go back and talk about this Michigan State matchup coming up. What are we focused on going forward over the next few weeks?
Big developing story right now, obviously, is at Oklahoma. What's going to happen? Spencer Rattler didn't play a snap. He seemed like he had a better attitude, but that could all just be for show. And his next job, the next school he goes for, already seeing Twitter blow up with graphics of where does he land next year if he enters the transfer portal. And everybody's just having fun speculating. But on the other side of that, Caleb Williams is looking great, and he's just the new talk of the town, the new flavor of the week, if you will. All the analysts are giving him high praise, and he's really just played a game and a half. Is that it? Like 6 quarters? And yeah, he's already getting crowned the new king.
Yeah, it goes back to, something I say every single week. And this is really the case in life, not only college football or sports. If your number is called, you see your opportunity, you seize that opportunity, and you succeed, you have an opportunity to then excel and really propel yourself into a future that you might have never expected for yourself. But if you seize that opportunity, you'd be very amazed what those possibilities are for yourself. So it's impressive to see Caleb Williams really prove this philosophy true. When your number is called, go out there, expect your number to be called, expect your number to, come up and come out of the coach's mouth, and be ready for your opportunity, because everyone will have their opportunity sometime in their lives. It depends whether or not they will take advantage of that opportunity or not, or let it go to the wayside. So Caleb Williams definitely did the former, and he got the job done and is continuing to do that even, amidst Spencer Rattler and all the praise that he was getting before Caleb Williams came onto the scene. All it took was one game for him to falter, and it gave Caleb Williams that opportunity, because that Oklahoma coach, that Oklahoma team, they don't want to lose. They will do whatever it takes. And unfortunately, this is what you don't really see a lot in sports, because a lot of politics is played. Oh, this is my guy. I got to have faith in my guy no matter how bad he's playing. I got to ride him out. And, for them to make that change, so quickly within the same game, against Texas, that is a very impressive move, because, he's like, okay, this guy's not the guy getting the job done. Let's get the next guy in there, at least try him out. Did a great job, hell of a job, won the game, winds up playing him the next week. So a lot to be taken away from a coaching perspective from the Texas
can look
game.
at it and compare it to when Nick Saban national championship, he switched from Jalen Hurts to Tua Tagovailoa. That's huge. That's a big risk. But I know it's not the national championship or even the playoffs, but a loss versus Texas right there changes the trajectory of your season. And it was a huge turning point, and it led to them winning.
Yeah, it's a next level coaching move in my perspective. And, you don't really see that a whole lot, because, like I said, a lot of politics are played. But to see them make this change for the betterment of the team is
Here's a
very
hypothetical. Could you see if Caleb Williams does have a great rest of the season, leads them to some success in the championship, the Big 12 championship, and then in the college football playoff? Could you see him winning the Heisman that we started halfway through the season?
I definitely would not count him out. I'd give him the next few weeks to really prove himself, because he still has a ways to go, since he doesn't have as many games as Spencer Rattler or others that are on the Heisman block or the Heisman watch list under their belt. But we got to focus on Caleb Williams and watch him, see what he's able to do. 50-50 situations. How is he able to scramble in the pocket? Is he able to fight for extra yards on the ground? Is he able to put that team on his back? He seemed like he's been able to do that so far, but we got to see the longevity of it. And I got to see a couple more games before I really put him on my Heisman watch list.
Just had to ask. I'm not putting him on mine. We both know, just like how the polls go, that those voters, they love a story. So I just had to pose that question. Be the devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, that's a good question too, because everybody, especially the AP polls and everybody, analysts, broadcasters, and they essentially make the AP polls, right? They love an underdog story. And if they can have the opportunity to have that and make that a story and make that something that will, influence people that are, Heisman analysts, then there's a serious opportunity that he'll at least be in the conversation come that time. So stuff to look forward to. Good deal. Good deal. All right. So that brings us towards the end of the show. Cody, do you have anything else you want to plug before we get off today?
Yeah. If anybody can give us some feedback before the next show, who you think should coach next at LSU after the news that Ed Orgeron and the LSU Tigers will part ways in 2022. He's going to finish out the rest of the season. So if anybody has any ideas who should be the next coach at LSU, let us know.
Yes, sir. So that could be possibly a gin and tonic topic going into the week, either from Cody or I. Really impressive information there. That's kind of taking the world of sports by storm and really, shocking a lot of the LSU Tigers fans around the world. So stay focused on that. That's a developing story. And how will he focus on finishing the rest of this season? Because he still has to finish this season. And they're looking very shaky. Are they even going to be bowl eligible? These questions are the ones that we have. So really interesting stuff. Focus on that and stay tuned for that information coming out as it develops more. But yeah, good stuff, guys. Make sure to stay tuned for merchandise coming out very soon. We're working on the prototypes for the hoodies, the Gin Sports Network and Gin Promotions hoodies that will be coming out, the graphic hoods. And we're really excited for that. The t-shirts, the Color Rush t-shirts will be coming out ASAP as well, going into the Michigan State game. So stay tuned for that. Also, we have our events coming up in late November. We have the Turkey Bowl coming up. The dates have been solidified: November 21st for the Turkey Bowl and November 27th for the Gin Fall Classic at Kitson for the disc golf tournament. So there's a lot of stuff in the works. Stay tuned for all of it. Stay posted to our social media and make sure you stay in the loop so you don't get left in the dark. Good deal. Good deal. Well, thank you, Cody, for joining me today. And thank you to everybody listening and watching for tuning in to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, as always, John Gin II. Have a great day.